Welcome into another edition of New Track Record. Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney with you. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Mr. Hatch.
How are we doing?
Oh, we're doing.
It's
the dog days of winter, you know?
Yes. The good news is, I feel like the IndyCar offseason has flown by.
Yeah, so far. We have, a month and a half still to go?
Yeah.
It's usually the final 4 or 5 weeks that is the most grueling.
That's true. At least next week, we'll have the Rolex 24.
Yeah.
So we'll have the racing season start, essentially. Then I think the anticipation builds, but it also feels like the days go slower and slower and slower before we get there.
They do. And you'll have Daytona, which, yes, I do watch Daytona, at least some of it. But after that, then you're really struggling to over the final few weeks to get to IndyCar. But it could be worse. We could be going slower. So, yeah, we're heading in the right direction.
So a couple of headlines this week. These weren't surprises. We had heard these drivers rumored for seats. It was just a matter of where would they go. Takuma Sato confirmed at Chip Ganassi Racing for the number 11 car. He'll run the ovals. Marcus Armstrong, the rookie from New Zealand, will run the road and street course races. So Sato back with a top team for the Indy 500. That will be very interesting to watch. Meanwhile, Ray Robb confirmed as the other driver at Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware Racing in the number 51 car. So another rookie, two 21-year-olds paired with that team. Those are kind of the headlines for this week. I think we'll start with the Sato news just because of how big that is for their Indy 500 lineup. This is a situation where Sato wanted to be full-time. He even kind of wanted to return to Coyne. It just didn't seem like that was going to be an option. But to see him get this opportunity, and this could be it. I'd be surprised if he does more than the Indy 500 after this season.
Yeah.
Unless he does this oval role. But I don't know if that will be the thing moving forward because Ganassi really, really wanted that seat to be one driver full-time. So this is a great opportunity for him. You just don't know how many more of these opportunities he's going to get.
And it's probably based on performance as well. If Takuma Sato can go out there, get a win, for Ganassi, they're hoping to be ultra competitive at the 500 and maybe get Taku a third 500. But even elsewhere, places like Texas and Gateway and all that, being a competitive driver there. So that's what they're hoping to get out of Taku. If he can show that ability still, maybe it buys him more time in the series going forward with multiple races a year. But other than that, I see a guy that's probably this is his swan song in terms of being a competitor, consistent competitor in IndyCar. And the guy's 45, 46 years old. So
45 years old.
I still think he's a tremendous driver and tremendous asset, especially with the relationship with Honda of Japan and the Japanese people in their interest in IndyCar. And I hope that continues in finding somebody to fill that role once Taku is gone. But what better way to end, I guess, a significantly good IndyCar career with a couple wins by maybe arguably it's definitely one of his best drives, his best seats of his career, and a very good opportunity to at least have a competitive car in every event he enters, which hasn't always been the case for Taku in the past.
Yeah, I mean, you look, he won with Andretti in 2017. He won with Rahal in 2020. And Marshall Pruitt pointed this out on Racer.com. Driver to win most recently for Foyt, which was Long Beach in 2013. Beach. Also Rahal in 2020 at the Indy 500. They haven't won a race since then, which is kind of hard to kind of process, but it's accurate. But this is his best shot. I mean, he's run for Rahal and Andretti. He's had successful runs in the Indy 500 beyond just those two wins. But this is by far, you feel like his best opportunity, at least going in. Obviously, when he won in 2017, you felt like he had a good shot. And in 2020, they also had good cars, which Rahal normally is not qualified well at Indy, but they qualified well that year. And both he and Graham had two of the three best cars in the field. The other one, obviously, Scott Dixon. But this is his chance with a top ride. And I get that it's not the 9 and 10 car, if you will, but this is a really good opportunity for him, perhaps his best entering the month of May.
And the bonus, or maybe the biggest thing about this deal is fans and viewers of the series can continue to play one of their favorite and my favorite drinking games watching IndyCar races is how many times is the phrase "no attack, no chance" going to be mentioned on the broadcast?
That will continue for sure.
Yes. So if Taku is up there at any race, you're going to hear that multiple times.
And again, he wanted to be full-time, this part-time role. Look, do you take the full-time ride at Coyne or you take this part-time ride at Ganassi? I think I know the answer.
I think if Taku had visions of racing in this series multiple years going forward, I think the Coyne position and seat is better. But I think Taku, too, also sees the writing on the wall, and he probably feels it, too, every bit of 45, 46 years old, and he wants another shot, the greatest shot at winning a third Indianapolis 500. And when comparing the two, there's no debate. Not saying Coyne can't be competitive, but in terms of wins, that's where it starts at Ganassi, and he has a better chance of winning the Indianapolis 500 there as opposed to Coyne.
I just think it's good to see guys who are up there in age still be contenders. And we've seen it over the last several years, that experience that, outside of really Ericsson, like guys are winning in their 30s and 40s. The experience really matters for the Indy 500 and for the Ganassi team, for the McLaren team. Yeah, they have some young guys, but they also have a ton of experience on those teams. And we'll get to kind of a debate between those two next. But this feels like a great position for him to get a third. And it's still up in the air if Jimmy Johnson would be in a fifth Honda car, which is a possibility. My guess is they would have to get that nailed down by St. Pete.
The longer we go without that, the less I think. I feel like Chip Ganassi, as much as it's up to Jimmy Johnson, Chip Ganassi wants to know what the hell's going on with that seat. I mean, yes, it is January and you have till May, but that's 4 months to figure out what that team is going to look like, the behind the scenes, all that stuff. And team owners are masters of planning, especially the successful ones. And you have to think that Ganassi, if he doesn't know already what the answer is, probably knows which way that Jimmy Johnson is leading and can plan accordingly. Because, 4 months seems like a ways away, but it's really not when you're looking at once you start the season. And it's very much a sprint to the Indianapolis 500.
So you look at the teams and Chip Ganassi Racing with a very solid lineup. You got to remember last year how successful they were with their cars in the field. And while it didn't go for Scott Dixon with that pit stop speeding penalty, otherwise, I mean, he was the clear favorite, won the pole, was the dominant car most of that race. You had Alex Palou get shuffled out of the order. He looked like a contender. Tony Kanaan ends up with a good run, finishing in third, and then Marcus Ericsson just seized the moment at the right time in the win. Great lineup they had last year. Jimmy Johnson crashed, but he qualified well. Then you look at this year and the lineup they have. Ericsson, defending 500 winner. Scott Dixon, still one of the best in the game. Alex Palou, again, expect him to be a contender.
Right.
And Sato as their lineup. Then you compare that to Arrow McLaren and their four cars for the 500. Guys who went second, third, fourth, fifth last year with Pato Ward, Tony Kanaan, Felix Rosenqvist, Alexander Rossi. That's their lineup. I mean, between those two teams, do you feel like the winner comes from one of those two teams? I mean, they have to be the two favorite teams going into it. It's top Chevy team and top Honda team, which is wild to think. We're not talking about Penske in this scenario, but McLaren has clearly got a top of the line lineup. Obviously, same at Ganassi. It's just, do we see the winner from one of those two teams?
I'd say if you're a betting person, you would, but anything is possible at the 500. And I'm not counting Team Penske out at any time until we get into the month of May and see if they've changed things around and see if they're better. So to me, Ganassi is the team to beat because you have, three different Indy 500 winners on that team. Marcus Ericsson, Scott Dixon, Takuma Sato. You have two series champions in Dixon and Palou. And you look at Arrow McLaren with one Indy 500 win.
Two.
Two, excuse me. And
one series championship.
Well, champion,
but that was with a different team.
Yes.
A long time ago.
in a galaxy far, far away. But yes, I'm still taking Ganassi over McLaren at this point.
I think because Ganassi has gotten it done, I think I take them. McLaren has been on the cusp for several years now.
And quite frankly, recent history too. So, yes. I mean, Tony Kanaan won it. What was it? 2013. I was going to say 2015, but 2013. And Rossi, of course. But no, I'm taking Ganassi at this point. They're, in my opinion, the power team in the month of May right now. They're the team to beat, in my opinion.
Either of those two teams, you mentioned not counting out Team Penske. Unfortunately for Team Penske, talented guys, but for whatever reason, they've just been not in the hunt in the Indy 500 for a couple years now.
Well, that's program. That's not anything that the drivers, in my opinion, are doing. And you would expect this year, as we do every year, that all three of their drivers should be contenders. I don't think we've sat here last year and thinking that Scott McLaughlin could be that guy because we hadn't seen it yet. But after the season he had in 2022, we absolutely expect him to be in the conversation. So when we look at Penske, and on the surface, you say, okay, all three of those guys can be series champion contenders. Can all three of them be Indy 500 contenders? I don't think it comes down to the drivers. I think it comes down to the program around them.
Yeah, just getting the strategy calls right, having the speed. I mean, Honda not only had the top end speed last year in qualifying, but they also had it in the race. And that was clear.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of lineup, I think you're very impressed by both Ganassi and McLaren, but there's going to be drivers lurking. I mean, I'm not counting out Team Penske. I'm not counting out Andretti. I'm not counting out Ed Carpenter, but the addition of Taku is a tremendous asset for Chip Ganassi Racing, not just for the 500, but in all the ovals. I mean, if you had to put over under 0.5 wins for Taku this year, would you go over or under?
That's tough because we're only talking 5 races here.
Right.
But we're talking one of the top teams. He should have top of the line equipment, which he hasn't had in several years. Not that Coyne was bad or Ray Hall was bad or even Andretti. I mean, Andretti was top of the line at the time when he won. I mean, they were a clear favorite team in 2017 as far as the speed and what they had to bring to the table. But yeah, this is the best of the best. At a half, I'd have to take the over just because of the opportunity. Really? I mean, Texas, Indy, 2 at Iowa, Gateway. I mean, he's had success at all these different types of tracks. Like, it's not like he's limited by just super speedways. So I think he'll have a legit shot to win a race here because of the team and the people around him.
The only thing that holds me back with Taku is tendency to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And not getting any younger. We've seen the racecraft of certain older drivers fall off. Jimmy Johnson, in particular, especially at the end of his Cup career, and that inevitably is a factor for some drivers. And will that be for Takuma Sato? And being a guy that's now in his mid-40s, still racing in this series. So if I had to bet, I would say the under, but I'm not very confident in that because anything could happen in any of those ovals. It wouldn't shock me to see Taku win any of them.
It's also just so hard to win a race in the series. So even getting one win is something. The guys who can win, 2, 3, 4 races in a year. I mean, that's a career year for most of these people. If you're not Scott Dixon or Will Power or Joseph Newgarden, those kind of guys. Yeah,
absolutely. So good story to see Taku. It was something that we expected for a while. It just finally came to fruition officially. But what are the expectations you feel for Marcus Armstrong in the road and street courses? Can he be a guy that slides in and is competitive from the jump, or at least when we talk about rookies, maybe be the best performing rookie? He can't win Rookie of the Year because of the races he's going to miss, but in terms of the most consistent, could he be that guy? I feel like he's in the best position.
Yeah, in my opinion. He's got the best seat. If he was running the full schedule, I think he'd be a clear favorite for Rookie of the Year. You look at these guys who come from Europe. I mean, Lundgaard, for example, and the success he had. Callum Ilott, the success he's had. I know maybe the results, the end of the race haven't been there, but what he's done in qualifying and some of the stuff beyond him as far as like mechanical stuff, they've been very quick from the jump. And so having a guy was with his level of experience in Formula 2. Won 4 races, including 3 last year, 4 podiums last year. Yeah, he was only 13th in the standings in 2020, 2021, and 2022. But that's a lot of experience in a near top level car. I just think, yeah, he's set up to succeed. It's just, again, the pressure of the team and being a rookie, those are the things you have to balance out, because that could be tough, because I think people think because of his equipment and his experience that he's going to jump in and be competitive right away. And maybe he could be, but I don't want to say he's going to be the guy as far as the rookies go, just because of, I think, that added pressure.
And a guy that at the very least has a lot of seat time in Formula 2. And I think that could be the biggest thing for Marcus Armstrong to make that switch over to IndyCar be a little bit more of a transition, a smooth transition, as opposed to some of the other guys in terms of Stingray Robb, Augustine Canapino, and Benjamin Peterson, at least in that amount of time in the seat. He has, in my opinion, exponentially more in terms of the younger or the junior formulas than any of those other guys. But speaking of Stingray Robb, officially getting that seat at Coyne, correct?
Yes, the number 51 car, Dale Coyne Racing with Rick Ware Racing. So Coyne's lineup is set. 2 Americans, 2 21-year-olds. One of them a rookie in Stingray Robb. One of our favorites just because of his name. Love the name. That's his real name.
He's been a guy that we've watched come up the ladder because of his name, Stingray.
And I think he's a guy who, when you look at his ladder career, had a lot of success. Won Indy Pro 2000, which what it was named at the time for Juncos in 2020. First year in lights with Juncos, a bit of a disappointment, 8th in the standings. Moves over to Andretti last year. Had some success. Won a couple of races on the year. And finished 2nd in the standings. I think it's a situation where he found the right situation for him, seized it, and we'll see what he can do. He clearly has talent. I think he comes in with maybe less hype than other guys who've had success in lights, especially for an American driver. But he's a guy who's clearly talented.
Here's how I'm approaching this seat mentally is I hope Stingray Robb has success in this seat. He's shown competency in the junior formulas, winning Indy Pro 2000, 2nd place last year in Indy Lights. I hope it works out for him, but in my opinion, that's Linus Lundqvist's seat. And unfortunately, it didn't work out financially for Linus Lundqvist. Linus Lundqvist won Indy Lights. He should be in the IndyCar series if the funding was there, as it's supposed to be, for the Indy Lights champion. Then Linus Lundqvist is in that seat, at least in some of the races. Maybe they're splitting it or something. So as much as I hope Stingray Robb succeeds, Linus Lundqvist, with his on-track performance, earned that seat. But unfortunately, it didn't go to him because of financials.
Yeah, Stingray Robb, 1 win, 2 poles, 4 fastest laps, 8 podiums last year, and finishing 2nd. Just to compare what Linus Lundqvist did on the year, I mean, he was dominant. I mean,
destroyed competition in Indy Lights.
Dominated the series last year.
This wasn't like he edged Stingray Robb by 1 point. Like,
no.
He owned Indy Lights last year.
He did. First place, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins. I mean, there's not much more you can want from that as far as what he did. 5 wins, 7 poles, 3 fastest laps, 9 podiums. I mean, he had this title locked up with a couple of races to go. This was a dominating performance, like you said, and it's unfortunate that they changed the structure of the prize money, because that's the only reason he's not in a seat.
Correct. And if the mission is to get the best and brightest and most impressive race car drivers from the ladder into the IndyCar series, it failed with Linus Lundqvist not being in a seat and Stingray Robb getting a seat. And that's not a knock on Stingray Robb whatsoever. It's exciting to have him in the series, but just the performance isn't there to usurp Linus Lundqvist and being in this series. And so that's why I'm not too thrilled with Stingray Robb. Love that he's in the series, but I'm looking at it going, that should be Linus Lundqvist in that seat, unfortunately. So that's kind of how I feel. It's unfair to Stingray Robb. I'm going to sit here and say that. My opinion is unfair to him because he has no control over it, but that's just how I feel, that should be Linus Lundqvist in that seat.
Yeah, he didn't do anything wrong. Like he competed. He was a solid second place in the series.
Got the funding together.
Yeah. It's just Linus Lundqvist doesn't have the support. I think we'll see Lundqvist in a race this year. It's just I don't know what the program will look like. I think it's disappointing because we thought maybe he could be a road and street course races guy, and then if things go well, they get the funding for the 500. We thought that was kind of like the minimum, but now it's seeming like, does he even run the 500 at all? Like, is that a best case scenario?
I think the best case, the most likely scenario to me is a team that gets rid of a driver late in the season with like 3 or 4 races to go, and they can plug Linus Lundqvist in there, kind of an audition for 2024. That's kind of where I see the opportunity coming for Linus Lundqvist at this point. Maybe that changes. Maybe it turns into a 500 ride somehow. But right now, that's the path to IndyCar I see for Linus Lundqvist. And it's inevitable because we're seeing it more and more each season is teams getting rid of underperforming drivers before the end of the season and plugging somebody else in there. And that's where I see Linus Lundqvist's role being somewhere in some seat in 2023, being on the back end of the schedule.
We talked last week about the funding and how it's changed for Indy Lights for the better next year. So, for example, this from Trackside Online, they issued a kind of a follow-up on the funding. So this year, including scholarship and race winnings for 2022, the champion ended up with $660,000 in winnings. In 2023, a driver with the same record would win $937,500. That's a huge difference.
Yeah. Humongous.
So it just goes to show, essentially wrong place, wrong time for Linus Lundqvist.
Unfortunately, but you can't allow any drivers to fall by the wayside that do what they're supposed to do in terms of making the IndyCar series, let alone a dominant driver like Linus Lundqvist.
Yeah, this is not a situation like, for example, we saw J.K. Vernay many years ago, and he won lights and had an IndyCar test, and I think he crashed in it. It didn't go well.
Yeah.
Like, it's not one of those situations. This is a guy where if you're a dominant winner, I haven't heard or seen anything negative about him testing wise.
Just doesn't have money.
Yeah. And I think the troubling factor. So we want to talk about negative stories. I know there's a lot been said about the marketing or lack thereof in the sport this offseason. There's been people complaining about that as far as maybe the negative offseason storyline. I think the real negative offseason storyline is just the fact that Linus Lundqvist doesn't have a seat next year for this year.
Because it shows that the system is broken. And that's why IndyCar has been lucky enough to get an influx of European talent, is because the system is broken in the FIA in terms of moving up from F4, F3, F2, F1. The system is broken. You hit F2 and then you're blocked. And the alternative was always, I'm going to go to the United States because their ladder works. Well, no, it doesn't, because Linus Lundqvist doesn't have a ride. So that is of paramount importance to the future of the sport, is making sure your feeder systems operate and work the way they're intended to, particularly when alternatives don't work, is you are that one thing that actually comes to fruition and operates and works the way it's supposed to. If it doesn't, then you're no better than Formula 2.
And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
You just have to make sure it's the only time that ever happens.
This is a TBD right now, right? Because I feel like we'll still get to see him participate in some events. And it was never a guarantee before that the scholarship resulted in a full season. Teams often found a way to make it work that way. But this is obviously a massive, massive downside. Or otherwise, we've had a lot of good storylines this offseason. With the largest full-time field with 27 cars since 2011. With the streaming series finally announced with Vice and CW.
Which CW, you mentioned this to me earlier this week, because people and even me initially hearing CW and rolling their eyes, but they're making a push for live sporting events, correct? Since they've been bought by Nexstar?
Yeah, they are in the running for the Live Tour rights, the golf tour. In fact, that's seemingly maybe not a done deal, but that's where they're going to end up. And it may not be a prime time time slot from what I understand, but they'll put it there. They also want to have a college football bowl game, obviously the IndyCar stuff. So they're becoming a player in sports rights, and why not? Because that's how you get ratings on TV, right? The NFL is king. Live sports are king. TV shows don't draw ratings anymore. It's all about you add in the plus 1 week as far as the streaming, and that's where you can actually see the numbers for TV shows. Right. Live sports are live. You get the viewers right there or within 24 hours on the DVR. And so that's huge for advertising and selling to people.
So CW, it's not just a back end type network. It looks to be making a push for legitimate things. So for the future of IndyCar and having this opportunity on the CW is, I think, a better opportunity that maybe it was 2-3 years ago in terms of where the network was. So, and Vice does a tremendous job with what they do with their documentaries. So I think it's better than I thought and a lot of other people thought. And the fact that they're trying to add the Live Tour is just the next step towards them trying to make a greater footprint in the sporting world.
Yeah, we'll see what becomes of it, and we'll hope the IndyCar series adds something to the table for them on that as well. So that's a look at kind of the headlines that we had this week in IndyCar. Silly season essentially done. The only question marks we have now looking at this are Indy 500 entries. We have the 27 entries ready to go for St. Pete, which, can you remember a time where it's been mid-January? I mean, this is unreal.
It's usually late February.
We can focus on all the negatives, I mentioned, but the positive, a full field, it's mid-January. We already know who's going to show up at St. Pete.
Right.
I mean, you go back even, I don't know, less than a decade ago, and you have Coyne showing up with drivers where it's TBA the week of on the schedule for the first race.
Yeah, so for that, in that respect, when we're talking about positive and negatives of the offseason, tremendous positives. Not only the car count, but also the locked-in status of the field this early. So hopefully it leads to a lot of preparation for these teams and not kind of scrambling towards the end and the start of testing and getting into St. Pete and still trying to get guys fitted for seats and all that certain programs. So now everybody's locked in. Everybody should be ready, hit the ground running, hopefully at St. Pete. And Thermal for that matter, which is coming up, correct?
Yeah, Thermal Club coming up February 2nd and 3rd in Southern California. That'll be the first look for a lot of these guys with that test. And again, that weekend, the Clash. So IndyCar trying to usurp some of the media covering the NASCAR event. Hey, if you drive out 45 minutes an hour, whatever it is, it's probably more than that due to traffic in LA. But to try to get some of those media members to attend both before the Clash, which is, I believe, a Sunday, February 5th. It's a pretty smart move by IndyCar, and that will essentially be the spring training, and we'll maybe get some more announcements then as far as news and other items for IndyCar leading in at that point a month before the season.
Yeah, so a lot to look forward to, right? Despite some of the negatives and sometimes us harping on the negatives, it's a positive.
For sure. A major positive with how things have played out this offseason, at least with the driver side. You can talk about the off-track stuff, as we mentioned, the marketing and, Linus Lundqvist, we just talked about that and all the other stuff, but full field streaming series, you check those boxes and you have an interesting something to look forward to as far as the spring training event. It's something new. It's something different. So all selling points for IndyCar ahead of the upcoming season. We'd love for you to interact with us. You can find us, newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, sign up for the email list. It is free. You'll never miss an episode or any special announcements. Also, check out the store. We have stickers and t-shirts for sale for you. Plus, you can find us on your favorite social media platforms. Twitter, IndyCar Podcast is the handle. Same on Instagram, on Facebook. Just search for New Track Record. You can find us there. You can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. Also, support us via Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier, Rob, and the others for their support of the podcast. Tiers as little as $1 a month. That's all it takes to be a supporter of us. And you can, as always, listen and follow for free on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, CastBox, wherever you find your podcasts, all for free. Mailbag time, and fairly quiet week on the mailbag. Not that that's a major surprise, but looking at IndyCar silly season, Hunter's Way 67. This in regards to Sato. He immediately shoots to the top as a favorite to win the 500. Should be a three-timer already, in my opinion. He's on the short list for sure.
I would agree. I wonder if I don't think the Indy 500 odds are out yet, but I would imagine he's in the top 5 to 7 picks right now in terms of odds.
This from Burkle 777. Silly season's complete. Talking about Stingray Robb, and he said, "Good for him, but such a shame for Linus Lundqvist. What does he have to do to get a ride? # justice for Linus." Unfortunately, have more money. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, unfortunately, he needs a major backer to step up at this point. So yes, echoing my opinion, nothing against Stingray Robb, all that stuff. Great opportunity for him. Congratulations. But Linus Lundqvist should be in that seat.
Absolutely. A look at votes for IndyCar Rookie of the Year. Ian Armstrong, Canapino of Juncos, Stingray Robb, Dale Coyne Racing, and Benjamin Peterson with Foyt. That's your 4 rookies. Obviously, it's going to be harder for Armstrong to be
not running the full schedule.
In competition. Looking at the poll so far, actually a couple hours left, but Stingray Robb a clear favorite, 56%. Armstrong 29%. That's a bit of a surprise. Canapino 5%, 10% for Peterson. Some replies here. P Gaynor 14 says, "Going to be interesting, but I picked Robb, best combo of talent team that we are aware of so far. Obviously would have picked Armstrong if he was running full season." Let's not discount, and I'm not saying there's going to be bumping for the 500. I have no idea. At most, we'll probably have 35 entries.
True.
And we already have 31 driver car combos and 32 if we count the second for Brian Reibold, 33 if you count the fourth for Ray Hall, and that's 33 right there.
But if one of those guys, those rookies, would get bumped and miss out of double points, does it bring him back to the pack with Marcus Armstrong?
Yeah, or crash in the race and finish, 25th or worse.
Sure.
It's not out of the question. It's really hard missing 5 races, especially Iowa, because that's a double header. So you're essentially talking double points that weekend in a way. It'd be very tough, but I think based on his car and his equipment, I think it'll be closer than we expect.
But unfortunately, even if that would go in the direction of the 500, you still have 4 other oval races that would have to go terrible for those other guys. So Stingray Robb, I think, is the clear favorite. I still put Marcus Armstrong second.
Yeah, I would too.
And then I would say probably Peterson third and Canapino fourth. But I have no confidence in Benjamin Peterson doing much with Foyt until we see it, or any driver with Foyt for that matter. And Augustine Canapino is just such a wild card, such an unknown.
Because, drinking from a fire hose, learning the tracks.
So the expectations are going to be pretty low for Augustine Canapino in terms of performance. And he's bringing other things to the series for sure. And hopefully, like you mentioned last week, not a one and done type guy. He's going to be here for multiple seasons. So Stingray Robb right now in the clubhouse, your Rookie of the Year favorite.
Jamin T14, I'd love for Canapino to blow us all away, but I think Stingray will be Rookie of the Year. You sent in a write-in vote for Fabrizio Barbaza. Did I get that right?
Yes, former Rookie of the Year in IndyCar back in, I want to say mid-90s sometime.
I mean, I recognize the name, but I'm not going to lie. I didn't know he was a Rookie of the Year.
He did. He won Rookie of the Year. It may have been 500 Rookie of the Year. I'm going to have to look it up now because I picked it out of the air, really, just like I do random split air driver of the week. But Fabrizio, he raced in he was the 1987 Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year. That's what he was.
There you go. And he was third Wow, at Indy that year.
And Kart Rookie of the Year in 87.
That's
so yeah, it wasn't
good.
mid-90s, it was the 80s. But yes, I went. My write-in is Fabrizio Barbaza.
DeGuerra said, I'll be shocked if it isn't Robb. So that's a look at replies.
And not to
that.
marginalize Stingray Robb, but he could be maybe not necessarily the standout player, or standout driver in the rookie class as the least bad. I don't want to make it sound terrible, but that's kind of where we're at, because Peterson's with Foyt. I have no confidence in that. Canapino is a rookie in every sense of the word. That's not good. And Marcus Armstrong is not racing all the races. So by default, Stingray Robb is your Rookie of the Year leader, maybe not because of his performance, but because he's with the best team out of the four that's racing all the races.
Yeah, and it's almost by default, right?
Yeah, and this is the thing. So, and we were talking about Jimmy Johnson earlier, and my dad asked me this kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's true. Like, if Jimmy Johnson isn't in the series and only races the 500 or nothing, that's a lot of airtime that NBC is going to have to actually figure out what to talk about that's relevant to the race itself, maybe at the front. So they're going to have to fill a lot of content without Jimmy Johnson to fall back on, particularly early in the season. Wonder who that's going to be. And if a Rookie of the Year race doesn't deliver, really running out of material.
What am I going to talk about on the podcast if I don't have to apologize for Jimmy Johnson's results week after week?
Yeah, you're going to have to find some other scapegoat to blame your stuff on.
I'm tongue in cheek. I'm kidding. This from Poet Shevchenko. Alex Palou entering the realm of team ownership. Euro Cup 3 championship. Palou Motorsport be headed by Alex Palou. Driver announcements to follow in the future. I know nothing about Euro Cup.
Me neither. It sounds like some soccer related thing, but I don't know if it's a junior. Is it below F4? I don't even know if is it a
Formula Renault Euro Cup. So it's like open wheel cars.
Okay.
Oh no, that folded in 2020. So this is a new
iteration.
A new iteration. Euro Cup 3.
Should we do a Euro Cup 3 fantasy league?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. It is an alternative to the FIA sanctioned Formula Regional European Championship and Euro Formula Open Championship. The latter series struggled to attract entries. Teams agreed on a maximum budget of Euro 400,000 per season. They all use the Tatus F3 318 chassis. So it's an open wheel car. Alfa Romeo engine, Hankook tires, push pass system, extra 25 horsepower. They race at Spa, Monza, Zandvoort.
Is it equivalent
Estoril,
of,
for example, a couple other tracks in Spain?
So is it below F4?
I
F3?
think so. The series shares the same promoter as the F4 Spanish Championship. So that's why 6 of the 8 rounds are held there. And the first race weekend is at Spa, May 5th through 7th.
Gotcha.
So there you go.
That's very junior formula.
Yes. So we'll see what becomes of that team. That's a pretty cool deal. Palou getting more involved. Also, this from D_Mart23, our new track record fantasy league winner, talking about Larson in the 500. All it took was for Get Larson in the 500 to win the new track record IndyCar Fantasy League. Yeah, he was our winner. That was his team name.
That was the catalyst that put it over the top. Was
clearly.
Yes. So congratulations on being really the tipping point in getting Kyle Larson in the 500.
I'm sure we'll do a fantasy once those details come out again as well. Thanks everyone for your questions, comments. You know the channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, email.
All the things
to reach us. Okay. Time for a look at news and notes. A lot of little items. First off, this from Nathan Brown of the Indy Star. Music City GP organizers said they're committed to hosting a race in 24 and 25 during major construction of something in the Nashville area. So that as far as that's with the new Titan Stadium construction. The new stadium. So that's a positive sign.
It's going to be right next door to the existing Nissan Stadium. Yes. So basically where the paddock area is, correct, is really going to be under construction. So It's nice that there's a commitment there. What's the race look like? Is it another street circuit? Do they go to one of the nearby ovals to race, at least in the short term? I don't know, but it's good that they're committed to the race because this is a major project for Nashville, is building a new stadium.
Meanwhile, for some current tracks on the schedule, some changes. Alabama and Barber Motorsports Park, a new name. The Children's of Alabama Indy Grand Prix, a new title sponsor, Medical Properties Trust. And then that's the name, Children's of Alabama Indy Grand Prix. So no more HIGPA. It's hashtag Indy BHM.
Okay, I was going to wonder how they were going to...
Yeah, same. I was very confused. I'm like, what's the hashtag? Because HIGPA was so easy to remember.
Yeah, right?
So
no more Honda.
Yeah, no more Honda.
Okay.
Also...
But I love that it's a local or a state organization.
Yes.
That's stepping up to it. So that's good.
The Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, presented by RP Funding. Single day tickets on sale now. gpstpete.com/tickets. There you go. That's all the info there for you on that track. HMD Motorsports. They announced the team will expand its motorsports headquarters in Brownsburg, Indiana, taking up an old Marsh.
Oh, really?
Marsh no longer values you, but HMD Motorsports values their old buildings.
Very nice. Expansion's always good.
Yeah, 65,000 square foot building, 843 East Main Street, former Marsh in Brownsburg. It's been vacant since 2017 when Marsh closed. They're going to make significant investment in the project. And look, this is the building block to an IndyCar team. I think that's clear.
Yeah, definitely. And so Marsh, when we moved into our current house, I think it's now been, 15 years, there was a Marsh nearby that closed. In fact, when we moved in, they were having their the liquidation sale and you could go in. And from then to late last year, it was vacant. And now they have a Planet Fitness in there.
It's a good use of the space.
Yeah. So 2017 to 2023 is better than, what was it? 2008 to 2022. And that Marsh just sat there. But it's a smaller Marsh than 66,000 square feet.
We have an old Scott's / Kroger just up the road from our radio station.
It's been
vacant for 15 years.
It's because of that cornucopia. They would tear it down, but there's an artistic cornucopia thing that I guess is of value to someone. I don't know. I mean, it's a unique thing, but unique doesn't necessarily mean.
And an old Scott's that was up on the north side of Fort Wayne that was torn down, and now it's just like a parking lot on
it's the one on Anthony and Crescent. Yeah, and they tore that down. Well, they had issues with the building and eventually tore it down. And I don't think they ever, they got the one up on Clinton that's kind of close, but we're going down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah. Either way, it's nice
fine.
to see these properties get some use. Again.
Yes, definitely.
All right, some other notes for you. Indy 500 Snake Pit is announced. I like to play this game. How many of these artists have you heard of? So here's the lineup. Cascade.
Vaguely familiar.
Yeah, I've heard of Cascade. Subtronics.
Vaguely familiar.
I don't think I've heard of that one. John Summit.
No.
DJ Diesel. Now, I had not heard of DJ Diesel, but I definitely know
who
DJ
Shaq.
Diesel is.
Yes, I didn't know he was still DJing.
I didn't either. So that's pretty cool. And that's a big time celebrity that, everyone knows who Shaq is.
Yes.
He's almost, has he become more of a celebrity after being a basketball player? I feel like he has.
I would say so. Now, some of it I think is the changing landscape of pop culture or social media and all that stuff. But when I was a kid, Shaq was a big deal coming out of LSU. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe for the more casual people, he's become more of a household name. But yeah, he definitely has longevity. That's for sure.
Shaq was a huge deal when I was a kid because he played for the Lakers.
Yes.
That's what I remember, him dominating the NBA with the Lakers. And of course, then he went on to play for all these teams, the Heat, Cleveland, the Suns, Boston.
Yeah.
Am I forgetting any? Obviously Orlando to start.
Yeah, Orlando was the pure with him and Anthony Hardaway. That was my time as a kid remembering Shaq in his quote unquote glory years.
Jowzo Official. I don't know if I said that right.
No idea.
But I've at least heard of Cascade, and I knew who DJ Diesel was when they said who it was. So interesting lineup. Look, some years I feel like the lineups are bigger, but I'm also not in that scene. And getting Shaq and Cascade, I think, is a really big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think whatever makes the people in the snake pit happy, I'm fine with it. They couldn't care less that there's a race going on.
Yeah, that is not our scene.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Jamie Chadwick will remain part of the Williams F1 Academy in 2023. Remember, she's running Indy Lights with Andretti. Also, SRX, so we know they're going back to the Thursday Night Thunder on ESPN. Kyle Busch, Clint Boyer, Kevin Harvick, Elio Castroneves, all set to participate in SRX this summer. We would expect Tony Stewart, obviously, to be there. Marco Andretti, the defending series champion, to be there as well. But some of the other names from NASCAR and IndyCar set to participate. Should be good. Really looking forward to this meeting on Thursday, and I think the TV ratings will go way up.
I will say the guilty pleasure of summer with no racing if there's no racing on Saturday night was SRX. So for me, I don't know how much I'll be able to watch Thursdays as opposed to Saturdays, but hopefully it works out.
It's a fun thing to flip to if it's on and you have nothing going on.
And I think you have a greater ability to get drivers from other series coming over when it's not on the weekends. I mean, conceivably, and I don't know how many drivers would actually do this, is you could race an SRX event on Thursday, then jet over to wherever the Cup race or IndyCar race or whatever is beginning practice on Friday. So I don't know how many drivers would actually do that, but conceivably you could.
More of an opportunity there.
Yes.
For sure. All right. A couple other things to get to. Will Power, he's withdrawn from the Rolex 24. His wife, Liz, underwent surgery and is dealing with complications. So best wishes to the Power family on that. Hopefully everything goes well. So obviously it's got to be pretty serious in this situation. So best wishes to them. It would have been his debut in the Rolex 24.
Hopefully she's back fully recovered and twisting the hell out of water bottles starting the IndyCar season.
Yes, that is just something you got to see at least in the month of May.
That is a story that, admittedly, maybe it's been told, but I've never seen anybody do a story on where that's come from, how long she's done it. Is it something she just started when he got an IndyCar? I want them to know the story. Is it just habit? Is it I need a water bottle, or it just so happens she has a water bottle in her hand? Like, I want the story behind the story for that. The
behind the music, if you will. All right, this tweet from Jimmy Broadbent, who has sim racing stuff, but the Motorsport Games saga is taking another negative turn. Motorsport Games employees threatened to leak the source code of 4 games. They've reportedly not been paid. They're threatening lawsuits. Entire board of directors left the company over funding. Everything is going downhill. Yeah, and this includes the IndyCar game, NASCAR Ignition 21, NASCAR Heat 5, IndyCar, and KartCraft. That's the threat. So not ideal. Again, I think we'll both be shocked if this game debuts in May like it's supposed to.
And I would imagine even with the NASCAR games, you want to get those out soon, but I haven't seen anything from Motorsport Games to highlight or get anybody excited for any motorsport game in 2023. Not just IndyCar, but NASCAR as well. Like it's not out there. Like, you have disgruntled employees, disgruntled former employees. You have a board of directors that doesn't exist, apparently. It's just an absolute dumpster fire. And not only did IndyCar rely on Motorsport Games to do this, but it also put all its eggs in one basket and effectively destroyed its relationship with iRacing. So it's a lose-lose all around, because it doesn't sound in a million years that this thing is going to come out. And even if it does, is it going to be an absolute turd? It sounds like if it does hit the open market, it won't be that good.
And then you have the whole iRacing thing, and
so I said, like,
everyone will be like, I told you so. I guess that was the other real negative story that everyone was talking about. And I'm not in that world, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on it by any means. But yeah, it seemed pretty bad that there was this exclusive thing with motorsport games and you left iRacing. It was just a very bad look for the sim racing community as a whole.
This just seems like a decision altogether that people that don't know much or anything about video games or gaming and how this works was sold on motorsport games despite their issues, probably with a snazzy presentation and all that stuff. Probably used PowerPoint. That's always clutch. And didn't see the impact or the effectiveness of iRacing. Like, it's just basically a bunch of people out of their element that don't understand. And you and me, admittedly, I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about iRacing or understanding how big that is, but I do know that it has its niche and it's craved by plenty of people. And it also exposes your sport to a lot of people that wouldn't otherwise watch or be interested in it. So another disaster, marketing disaster for IndyCar on the cusp, not just with the iRacing stuff, but now effectively looking at this IndyCar game, and would be shocked, absolutely shocked if it's a thing. I mean, this thing's supposed to come out in 4 months. Nobody has seen any type of preview or stuff that's involving the engine, the race engine, or anything, or cutscenes or models. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, they just had those like sims at tracks last year, like in the fan zone. I didn't try it, so I can't say what it looked like or how it was, but it was probably just really like an iRacing setup in reality.
Yeah, there's no graphics renderings or track renderings.
There's no teasers that we've seen.
No, there's just absolutely
trailers.
Nothing. And this thing's supposedly coming out in 4 months. It's not happening. There's no way. Unless there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't know. Everything public points to me like Motorsport Games maybe in its current iteration has released its final game, not just IndyCar, but at this point, how could you expect to see a NASCAR game this year?
Yeah, not looking positive. All right. Tweets of the week, just one tweet to get to. And this, again, we talked about it, but Steve Wittick of Trackside Online, a quick shout out to Linus Lundqvist, who has handled disappointment after disappointment with immeasurable class. He's got the talent, and his time to shine will come. I hope we see him in a race this year. That's all I got to say.
That would be my hope, my prayer, that we see him. And I right now, I would say he's a guy that's going to get an opportunity late in the season when a driver is removed from his seat for underperformance.
Random split error driver of the week time. Who we got this week?
All right, so we're going to kart, and we're going to go to 1999 and Andrea Montermini from Italy.
Who?
Andrea or Andrea. I don't know. What's the manly way to say Andrea? I'll say Andrea Montermini from Italy. He raced, actually had 19 starts in Formula One between 1994 and 1996. And he was a guy that in the early 90s raced in kart and then came back in 1999 with All American Racers and raced 4 races that season towards the end of the year. Vancouver with his top performance of 11th, also raced at Laguna Seca, Houston, and Surfers Paradise. That was his last time in kart. Before that, 93 raced for Euro Motorsport, 94 raced for Dale Coyne Racing, King Racing, and Project Indy. That's a trio of dominant programs if I've ever seen one. And actually performed in Formula One 94, 95, 96. So really bracketed his time in Formula One with being in kart and raced for Simtech, Pacific, and 40 in Formula One. And let's see, his top finish in Formula One, 8th in Germany, it looks like, in 1995 in the Pacific Grand Prix.
He was with the iconic MTV Simtech Ford team in 94, did not qualify for Spain.
Yes.
That was his lone attempt. But man, those cars to me are iconic.
The Simtech Fords, the MTV Simtech Fords?
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah, in terms of what you've seen out of those cars. And
not that they were good.
I remember Simtech Ford. I forgot that MTV was part of that whole operation.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Andrea Montermini, 19 starts in Formula One and career in IndyCar, as we're looking at it, or kart at the time. It looked like he had 11 starts total. Did not start the Surfers Paradise race in 1994, but had a 4th at Detroit for Euro Motorsport in 1993. That was one of 4 races for him to appear. Still with us, 58 years old, was born in Sassuolo, Italy. This week's random split era driver of the week, Mr. Andrea Montermini.
For Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hatch. We'll be back with more, the latest and greatest in IndyCar news next week. Thanks for joining us on New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.